Growing up, I drank the Kool-Aid of my parents' and community's beliefs. I made that belief system more important than my own needs and happiness. Looking back, I can't fault anyone for that, not even quote-unquote God. I now have clarity in decisions and choices I make. I'm fully engaged in finding joy in my life, in my own way, without the influence and construct of others. This is an uplifting discussion from there to now.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to have Naomi Fox Reina here. And she is a light-filled astrologer, and she has a vast, expansive knowledge of astrology, yet I have learned a lot about human design, and so has she, way on a more deeper level than me, I'll tell you that. But my friend who's studied human design tipped me off to your Instagram page, and I've been following you for at least a year to a year and a half, and I love all of the things that you share because you understand all of it, which means that you understand human design even better. And I wanted to talk about astrology in general and dive a little bit deeper into human design because a lot of people have these preconceived ideas about astrology. Is it fortune telling? Is it evil? Is it something involving the stars, which we shouldn't involve ourselves in, right? And the best part about Naomi is that she is a practicing member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I find that so beautiful and fascinating. In fact, I have an astrologer that I had seen recently, and she had a similar background. And so I love that perspective. You grew up in Colorado, and you've been here now for in Southern Utah, which is super, super conservative and a little bit more on the closed-minded side.
Yeah.
And you've been here for how long?
I first moved here in 2015.
Okay. And so you were telling me, I just marveled at how you are still practicing religion. And for me, I don't even care what religion it is, but to be involved in astrology and human design and understand I Ching and all of that stuff, and then and be in a practicing religion, I find that extremely fascinating. And how did you open your mind to be more encompassing with astrology? Because a lot of people see it as not a thing that follows the teachings of Christ.
Absolutely. It was really the Catholic Church, not to point any fingers, but it was the Catholic Church that really started to perpetuate the idea that astrology is evil and you shouldn't touch it. And in most conservative Christian religions, you do see that prevalent of astrology is evil, don't touch it. Mm-hmm. And that's certainly how I grew up. It wasn't like my parents went out of their way to shame it. It was just, we don't touch the evil things, and these are on the list of things. And so it was actually while I was going through a divorce from a violent marriage, so my heart and soul was cracked wide open, and so I was open to new things, and I had just moved here to St. George, and I was getting my hair cut with a friend of a friend. I didn't know anybody here. I was new. And she was like, oh, I'm really into astrology. What's your sign? And I was like, I'm a Sagittarius. I had no respect for astrology. I grew up in a very scientific family, very academic. And so I saw no benefit to it. And so when she was like, oh, okay, yeah. Do you know the minute you're born? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everybody know that? And she was like, no, not everybody knows that. Yeah. And so she runs my chart, and in like 10 minutes, she basically strips me down and teaches me all this stuff about myself that I didn't even have words for, or things that I wouldn't tell people I'd known for 10 years. So I was horrified, but I was also deeply intrigued, and I pretty much was like, okay, you have to tell me everything you know. And I couldn't stop. I couldn't get enough. In that moment, it validated so many things that I was feeling a tremendous amount of shame about, and it explained things in ways that nothing else could. But more than anything, I felt God in it. And so that's why I kept looking into it. And then before long, people asked me to tell them more about theirs and asked me to do sessions and asked me to teach them, and then even eventually asked me to certify people the way that I do it.
That is amazing. And when did you get certified in it?
I started offering certifications 2 years ago, and I've had over 111 go through my program, and I have 36 fully certified light-filled astrologers.
So what is your approach with light-filled astrology? Because I've met a variety of astrologers, and they all have a different approach, and I found that in human design as well. Mm-hmm. So what is your approach particularly with this?
We keep God at the center. And whatever that means to an individual, God, universe, divine, some kind of higher power. So if people aren't really into a higher power, I'm definitely not their flavor. But if they acknowledge and keep whatever is their higher power at the center of their life, this is definitely for them. And then from there, it's highly accurate. There's a lot of research, a lot of study behind it. There's a lot of actually understanding the principles. And I teach what's called the 4 dimensions of astrology, which means you look at the sign that something's in, you look at the planet as a filter, you look at the the houses as an undercurrent, and the aspects are the relationships between all of the different things. And so when you get those 4 dimensions fully up and mobile and you understand them, astrology comes alive.
And how are you seeing people respond to it, especially within the LDS community?
Life-changingly, again and again. I mean, I have experienced myself being the practitioner, being the astrologer, and also received it to have an entire life change in one session. Because what happens is when you understand and you hear the truth and you can see it explained about who you are, it kind of cascades back like a reverse domino effect, where all of a sudden you see differently something that has always been a challenge or something you never allowed yourself to do or something that brought a tremendous amount of shame. All of a sudden it just makes sense and you feel free. And that changes how you move, how you even breathe moving forward.
Is astrology fortune telling?
So I actually have in my code of conduct for my light-filled astrologers, we do not predict the future with astrology. I love Stephen Forrest. He's regarded as one of the world's greatest astrologers. He says, heaven help, or no, I think he says, God help the astrologer that tries to predict using astrology. Because there are things you can tell, like a weather report. Like you can look at the astrological weather and you can tell, like today, we had Mars conjunct Chiron today in Aries. What that means is Mars is war, boundaries, fighting, aggression, intensity. It's the part of you that comes out when somebody crosses your boundaries and you're not maybe your most kind self.
Right.
And Chiron is your soul wound. And it's the wounded healer. So it's wound and healing.
Kind of like the shadow a little bit. Would you call it that or not really?
I think it's the part that is the part that you're here to heal, and it takes you decades to work on healing that. The shadow would be Black Moon Lilith for sure. And each and every single part has its own shadow as well. And so with those two conjunct today, I mean, that was a really powerful energy. Lots of intensity, lots of aggression, lots of people who haven't been angry for years and years, and now it comes up and out. This is something that only happens about once every 2.5 to 3 years. And so it's that opportunity for unexpressed things to come through. And so a lot of people have been feeling a lot of intensity
Like
around
resentments.
this. A resentment, and also just you'll find that you're in what would be a normal conversation, but it's just not so pleasant.
So then I know with astrology, there are particular days and times that things are aligning or things are shifting and put into place, but you can feel it days leading up to it and days
Absolutely.
after it. So like I had a couple of friends and yesterday that felt a lot of tension and frustration and anger. And then I've noticed some buildup of energy at my office over the last couple of days. So would you say that that's because of today?
100%. Yeah, this is an energy that we would have felt for the last few days and will continue to feel for a few days. It was exact about 10:50 this morning local time. And I was very aware of it because I just watch that stuff. I don't necessarily contort my life around it, but it's like if you were going to plan a picnic for 50 people, maybe don't do it on the day that it's guaranteed to rain.
Okay, that's a really good point because there is a part of me, I love astrology. I've had very thorough reports done about a life in review, about the rest of my life, how I've gotten here, and also in the present moment and what's showing, but what can be shifted and changed. You know, all these different types of perspectives. And for me, I find that after training in neuro-linguistic programming, that suggestion is extremely powerful. And literally when you say, this is going to happen to you in 3 months, people literally take that on and then they perform it in an unconscious level.
100%, yes.
And so that is one of the things that I am a bit skeptical about astrology. Yes, it is a form of fortune telling in a way that you're setting up expectations and then people play out that fortune
100%.
themselves, right?
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. And bring on your skepticism. I went into this incredibly skeptical. And so I can appreciate that there's that. What I find more frequently as I really teach my students a lot, like to step out of ego. I mean, you can't fully divorce your ego. It doesn't work like that. But to consciously open the door and picture your ego leaving and then like gently close the door in your mind. And then you look at a chart and then you look at something. And so when I can be in that space, I can feel the planetary movements affecting me, sometimes more than others. And I also have learned to be honest enough with myself to know when I'm just creating something.
It's an incredible amount of self-awareness, which I'm always trying to be in a daily practice of for sure too. As we were talking, because she was looking at my human design chart, and there's so many open centers, which means I'm literally taking on everything and everyone around me. And so that has been one of the biggest practices I've gotten into in my morning for the last 8 to 10 years, where I am learning to identify me and my needs and my wants very clearly and how I feel, and not to let those other energies outside of me to influence that. And I create that protection. And so you were looking at my astrological chart. You were killing me, Naomi. I just met you today and I freaking love you. We were having so much fun talking before this started. And she's like, oh dear, we have a lot to talk about. I'm like, oh shit, okay. Let's hear it.
No doubt. Well, and plus, as a projector, you were saying that it's hard to be so self-aware. You're a projector. I'm a projector in human design. And projectors do amazing at guiding other people. We have superpowers for being able to see, like, oh, if you'd stop doing this and did that twice and bought this thing on Amazon, you'd quadruple your output. And, like, it's just obvious to us. But we can't do it to ourselves.
Right.
And so we are the most non-self-aware beings on the planet.
Yeah.
And so projectors need other projectors to help guide us. Be like, hey, sweetie, you need to stop doing that thing over there. And we need to help each other because we have massive blind spots when it comes to ourselves, for sure.
Absolutely. And I've seen that. And I'm like, how have I failed myself? I failed myself here. And failure obviously is a very strong word, an old construct.
Yes.
Comes from the male world. And that's something that I based a lot of my life off of until I would say maybe 10 years ago, where I'm like, actually probably less than that, I would say 6 years ago. It took me to move to Utah to slow the fuck down and to literally step out of my powerhouse. I'm a real estate, like, you know, I'm killing it and crushing and blah, and like the Cookie Monster. I had to like literally pull myself away to start seeing that I was being something that I'm not.
100%.
And behaving like I was behaving with all of this energy and this output that literally I just crashed because I don't have the capacity to behave like other people do in a lot of ways. I mean, I was able to accomplish a shit ton, you know, but
absolutely.
Still it's not in alignment with me. So that was one of the things that I have been working on and challenging. And of course, it takes astrology and human design to bring that more to my awareness to understand that part of me, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Projectors really latch onto this because projectors are the most likely to be deeply conditioned to be something that they're not. And so that is really a heavy factor. And because we're so gravitated towards systems and understanding systems, we're here to master systems. And human design is a very natural thing for us to get extremely good at so that we can help guide others through it.
And what were you saying about my chart regarding me thriving in systems or something? You're like from genius to something.
Yes, you have the genius to freak channel is what it's called.
I've never heard that. I was like, oh my God, how did you find out?
The 2343, it goes right from the ajna to the throat. And so what it does is it allows you to take these concepts that you have in your mind and bring them right out to the throat, right out to your voice, right out to be spoken. And there's like no interruption to it. And so you have these extremely highly developed, phenomenal ideas coming from your intuition, coming from your third eye, coming from all of that, as well as your mind. And they just come right out your throat.
Amen to that. And I've had to learn to hold back and just wait to be asked. That's been another practice. And that's a projector thing too, is to wait to be asked for information, because I have found that no one even hears what comes out of my mouth.
100%.
They don't hear it at all.
No, it's the weirdest thing. And each and every type has like what's called their strategy, is what you're referring to, the wait to be invited. And each and every type has one. And every single type absolutely deeply despises and hates their strategy because it's the opposite of what is natural. But it is the path to being able to create the most joy and happiness and ease and flow. For us, it would be success. For a manifester, it's peace. And for a generator or a manifesting generator, it would be satisfaction. And for a reflector, it would be surprise. It's actually what
Which is why it's just the 1%.
Yes, exactly.
They're the 1% of the population.
Yes.
Okay, so let's just go into human design. So we probably have a huge audience that does not even understand, barely understands astrology, but really doesn't know anything about human design.
Yeah.
So what exactly is human design?
Human design is a relatively new system that was given to us. The original download came in 1987 from a man named Ra Uru Hu, and he downloaded this weaving together of Western astrology, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, and the chakra system. All of it has been synthesized into this beautiful system that teaches us about how your aura type is, which means how your energy runs, how you're meant to govern, what your purpose is here on the planet, how you're meant to contribute or receive from society, and how other people experience you. I think that human design makes astrology look like nursery level when you get into it. But the beautiful thing about human design is the most potent parts, the most life-changing parts are the easiest to understand. And so I think that's why it's grown so much. Astrology has kind of been a steady, slow grow, but also is highly shunned by the deeply religious conservative. But human design, I've seen it kind of leap over those walls that astrology hasn't been able to. Even though it's based on astrology, people get so intrigued by it that they're able to integrate it. I even saw an article recently in Forbes about human design.
Oh, fascinating. That's really cool. So when you look at a human design chart, it almost mimics the Kabbalah, the tree of life,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It's missing a couple of arms, but it's very similar, and it does kind of mimic it in some form or manner.
Yeah.
And then it also mimics the chakra system that you'll see on there.
Yes.
And then it also incorporates I Ching and
The hexagram and
quantum physics.
Quantum physics, yes.
Right.
Because like when you and I are interacting with each other, our charts are mechanics of our aura are interacting with each other and anyone else that we interact with. And it can happen over distance or it can happen in person.
Right. And so the aura is identified through these categories that we mentioned. Like my friend is a manifester, and so she's got a repelling aura. She's literally, don't come closer to me. I'm going to slit your throat. Just kidding.
It's less of a conscious thing. Manifestors, they struggle so much when they learn they're a manifestor and they have a repelling aura because it doesn't actually have anything to do with personality.
Right.
But their energy announces, I'm not available.
Right.
It's like, I've had manifestors explain it to me like they feel like it's a garage door that closes. And then when they choose to, they roll it up, but then they close it again when they're done. And it protects their undefined sacral so that they don't get burned out. You and I don't have that.
No, we don't.
We're actually the opposite because the projector aura penetrates. We are actually made to violate energetic boundaries and be inside of other people.
I do it all the time.
It's a really intense experience for them, or it can
is.
become very addictive because a projector focusing on you is like the most amazing thing
Right.
that ever was, or it's the most irritating thing that ever was, depending on the projector and depending on if you want it.
Absolutely true. And so some people, I think, freeze like deers in headlights. And like, I'm literally like, reading everything. And my friends made jokes about how I am extremely penetrating in my questions. I'm very direct. I am super engaging. I am tuning in on so many different levels. And it's really enjoyable for me. It can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people.
Amen, sister.
Oh, really?
When my husband and
what
I
about
were
that?
dating, he's a generator. So the generator type is about 70% of the population, with half of them being manifesting generators.
Right.
And projectors are about 1 in 5, and manifestors are about 8%, and reflectors are 1%. And so when my husband and I were dating, I asked him so many different ways, like, are you sure that you want to hang out with me all the time? Because I'm a lot. And he really kept saying yes, and he still means it. We've been married 3.5, almost 4 years, and he still means it. He still really likes hanging out with me, but a projector, being around the same projector all the time is very, very, very intense.
Yeah, definitely. But would you say we're good in bed?
Because we have the undefined sacral, we will amplify the sexual energy of whoever we're with. So
Yes.
if you're with somebody who's terrible in bed,
Oh, that's true. You would amplify that terribleness. It's true. It is so awkward.
Yeah.
When anyone's awkward around me, I just feel so awkward too. I'm like,
because you're amplifying their energy.
Absolutely.
So the undefined sacral, like the way Ra talks about sexual energy, which I don't know if I definitely align and agree with it, but he basically says all sexual energy comes from generators, and if you're a non-sacral, like a manifestor, a projector, or a reflector, you don't have that sexual energy, and you're not actually here to even have sex regularly. And I'm like, I disagree.
Yeah, I would disagree with that too. Did he consider female hormones in that?
I am not exactly sure, but he was a manifestor and non-sacral, and so I like his button pushing perspectives because I love listening to people that I can disagree with, because if I only listen to people I agree with, I don't know where my own boundaries are. I don't know what my own limits are. But when somebody says their idea or an opinion and I'm like, I agree with you up until this point, then I know where my line is, and I kind of like that. And it's like, cool, you can have your own opinion, but I just can't go with you on that thing. Like, and, or even, I can't even support this anymore, but like, good luck to you.
Mm-hmm. So how does someone find out if they are a projector, a manifestor, a manifesting generator, a reflector, generator?
They can run their chart.
And how do they do that?
I have a free chart running on my website, illuxology.com. So you can run your astrology chart or your human design chart. It gives a lot of details. I really like the report generator that I have on my site.
So you need all of the same information that you would need for astrology.
Yes.
The place of birth, the date of birth, the time of birth.
Yes. And the minute really does matter. A lot of people are going to be like, great, I don't know the minute I'm born. Can't find my birth certificate. My mom doesn't remember. It matters, but if you don't know, just put the time of noon. But if you really want to know, run it for a bunch of different times throughout the day. Like run it for 1 a.m. and noon and 11 p.m. and see if anything changes. And then if it does, kind of run it in between is what I do if I just don't know the minute. But the whole entire human design chart can change. Like the aura type can change 1 minute to the next. It usually doesn't, but it can.
And AM PM makes a huge difference too, right?
Oh, massively. Oh, it's 12 hours difference. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And because it all just depends on where that's all lined up in the stars and the charts.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the clock sky, the sky clock.
Yes, precisely.
Is that what you would call it, a sky clock?
You can call it that, and I'll keep up with you. That's not necessarily what I call it. But,
What do you call it?
I would call it the zodiac or the sky or the celestial bodies. It just kind of depends on the context of what I'm saying, but yeah.
Yeah, the vernacular is very fascinating, isn't it? Even within the spiritual community on many things.
Absolutely.
And okay, so when did you start studying human design?
Human design came to me first in 2012, and I rejected it because I was presented it by a very bitter projector who didn't like that I was also a projector. And I was in a violent marriage at the time, so I had to put it away. There was no way that I could have allowed this system into my space. And so I remember distinctly thinking, there is no way that the minute I'm born has anything to do with my life. Like, I was very angry and annoyed and tossed it away. And it was 7 years later that another friend was like, oh, have you run your human design chart? Because I was struggling in physical burnout and really, really sick and couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm a projector. She's like, oh, there's no way you're a projector. You act like a manifesting generator. She's like, oh, wait, maybe that's why you're so tired all the time. It turns out, yeah. And so I was able to receive that information then, and it completely changed my life and started to integrate it very, very quickly. And since I had already been doing astrology, I had a ton of people's information. So I started running everybody in my life's charts, and I quickly created a database and started comparing charts. And before long, I had looked at 100 or 200 charts, just taking them all in and just kind of understanding and trying to track it all down and make sense of it.
And so what is the truth that you have found in it?
That's a beautiful question. The truth for me is really quite profound and nuanced, but the greater truth that I found is even more so than I have with anything else, even more so than astrology, is that truly everybody is having their own experience. And you really have no business marching into a person's life and telling them how they should or shouldn't be doing things. I hear everything through a different lens now. A lot of business coaches, they'll be like, you have to do it this way. This is the only way to be successful. And I really think that way is on the way out. But I can't abide by that anymore, because as a projector, we're not here to work. We're not here to do things the same way.
It's so hard.
As the generator-led world. And yet
working.
We love to pretend. I love to dress up as a manifesting generator.
Look at me.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm in my professional gear.
Yeah, watch me work. And so hearing coaches or people that write books or things like that kind of purporting this, I figured this out and this worked for me, and therefore it's going to work for everybody on the planet. It now just sounds silly to me, where before I didn't quite hear the distinction of that. And so to be able to kind of filter what I'm listening to, like I'm currently listening to the book 10X is Easier Than 2X. Super big fan, kind of low-key obsessed with this book. And somebody had commented, because I posted about it, and she was like, is this book good for projectors? Because she's still in that stage where she needs to be so careful about who she's listening to, because she's trying to decondition from being a generator. And I actually was like, yeah, this is great, but you really need to claim what you are and see the line of what you're not, no matter what type that you are, so that you can learn to filter for yourself, because everybody is going to be sharing, this thing worked for me and I think you should do it too. Almost every person out there that has had a huge aha or breakthrough is beating that drum. And so you have to learn to filter and say, ooh, that really resonates. I'm going to try that, or that works, or no, thank you. I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. That would end up hurting me. But yay for you that it worked for you. And so it's just that underpinning of every single person has their own approach and how it works, and that's beautiful. But down to the most nuanced things, like in human design, there's something called motivation. And it's something not a lot of people talk about. It changes very quickly based on the birth minute. So if you don't know for sure, it's really easy to have that one wrong. And so I listen to people's motivations, because there's 6 different types of motivations. And on the flip side of that, there's 6 different kinds of transferred motivations where most of us are coming from. We're mostly pushing from our transferred motivation and not from our authentic, what I call divine motivation. And so as I hear people, like one of my good friends, she's the flip of me. I'm innocence motivation and she's desire motivation, and they're on the flip side. So what's right for her is to figure out what she wants and go after it with everything inside of her. And that's beautiful. That ruins my life. I need to, being innocence motivation, I'm here to just follow the butterfly and just enjoy the sun on my face and just be. And it's beautiful and wonderful, but at the same time, like I can get myself really bent out of shape when I'm like, okay, goals and structure, and we're going to go after it. And so to give her permission, like she almost cried when I told her, you get to just want what you want. Your desires are divine. Please lean into them. Like the rest of the world needs you to go after what you want. And that sounds like a beautiful thing. But if you say that to somebody who isn't wired that way, it's not either going to help them very much, or it could even help them. I mean, hurt them.
Right. So it's interesting because there's another projector that works in my office, because you're right. Everyone that's in my life, I'm like, let's get a human design chart.
100%.
Because it's really interesting too to see how our dynamics work with each other too, with all those different types of energies and open centers and whatever, you go. And he's a projector, but he goes by an emotional authority. And for me, I'm just like, whoa, that guy's on a major roller coaster.
All the time.
Yes,
never
I do.
not.
No, I know. Yes, I do. I don't know. Where am I? I don't know. Here, over there. Okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, it's overwhelming for me.
Especially when they don't know it. I'm an emotional projector, and my emotional center is actually defined by my unconscious and conscious, my unconscious earth and sun. And so it's very, very dominant in my chart. And I'm so grateful that I know this, because my waves are huge. My emotional waves are powerful. I can influence the whole room. I can influence the whole house. But I'm emotionally contained. Like, I don't shove my emotions onto other people. But I'm surrounded by a bunch of sacral or non-emotional authorities. And so I'm aware that when I'm having a powerful emotional experience, happy, sad, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, I am dramatically impacting those around me, especially those that are non-emotionally defined. And I don't think most emotional authorities are quite as responsible with their emotions. Not a fault of their own, they just don't know.
It just lacks awareness.
Yeah, exactly.
Once it's pointed out, you're like, oh my God, I do that.
Yeah.
Okay, like for example, look at my astrology chart.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to point out to me particularly? Because you were saying you wanted to say something and I was like, save it till we're recording, because I would love to hear some insight, and then I'll be like, oh my God, I had no idea. Or
yeah, absolutely. So you've got some really interesting, fascinating things in your astrology chart. Like your Neptune is conjunct your ascendant, which means that the ascendant is the way that you enter the world. It's also called the rising. It's like the hi, nice to meet you, like face-to-face interactions. It's how you start everything. And so anytime you have a planet that is conjunct, like within 2 degrees of the ascendant, I'm not talking far away, I'm talking very, very close, it will color everything in your life, every single thing. It becomes your chart ruler, because your chart ruler is whatever planet rules the sign of your ascendant. So you're a rising Sagittarius, so normally your chart ruler would be Jupiter. But because Neptune is right there, your chart ruler becomes Neptune, which is the planet of dreaminess and spirituality and delusion and illusion and spiritual downloads and selflessness and unconditional love. So all of that is a very, very prevalent theme in your life. And then you're a sun sign Taurus and a moon in Libra. So both of those are Venusian. It's a very Venus-esque kind of a vibe, like very feminine in a lot of ways. And so like your Taurus sun has you very grounded and stable and determined in the things that you want to do. But your Libra moon is an air sign. And so it's a more agile, more adaptable, but also constantly seeking balance. And so you may do the thing where you create imbalance in your life so that you can balance it out again. Some people call it self-sabotage. I call it a Libra moon. And your Libra moon is very close to Pluto. And so that gives a tremendous amount of depth to your moon. It almost makes it like a Scorpio moon. And so your ability to swim in the deep waters is nearly incomprehensible for people.
Okay, well, that is such a beautiful insight on all of it, which for me, I'm like, ding. Oh, that makes sense. Ding. Oh, that's super interesting. Ding. Because like I said, I have not yet heard an astrologer read my chart like that. And so that was really beautiful.
And that's just your big three. I mean, there's a ton of other stuff in here, and it's all beautiful and amazing. But yeah, there's so many layers of information here for you.
And so a typical astrological chart is circular. And what you then see is symbols representing the planets and the stars. And you'll see the moon and the sun on there. And then they all will align in certain houses on the chart, correct?
Yes.
And so then the way that where they're placed in a house also, that's a more of a simplistic approach. And then you can go deeper, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But that is a simplistic way to look at your chart and understand, you know, what house, what are the attributes in that house, and this this planet, what's the attribute of this planet, and then those two together, what does that create?
Absolutely. It's like building a puzzle. It's like, so you've got the energy of Taurus, and then you've got the filter of the sun. So it's like, okay, you're going to have a lot of Taurus energy coming through you because the filter of the sun is very prominent. And your sun is conjunct Vesta, which is an asteroid that most people don't know about, but it gives that like burning, passionate quality of like doing something for a higher purpose. And so like looking at that and seeing the filters of how that goes. And then your sun sign is in the 5th house. So very creative, very expressionate, very focused on children, focus on the things that you create with your body. The 5th house is actually the most sexual of the houses, sensual, but also sexual. A lot of people try to pin it on the 8th house. And I say, no, the 8th house is just the taboo stuff. And not all sex is taboo. I mean, it depends on who you talk to, but when you're talking about just approaching sexuality, sensuality, your 5th house is loaded, and it would make you a more fiery, playful, passionate person that way. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that comes through in your energy.
Thank you. I'll say that as a thank you because I love that. That's all great. I'm like, yes. I told someone, I don't know, I was in a conversation. I'm like, yes, I burn through things. I'm like, I'm like the fire breathing dragon. And then I'm like, do with my passion, burn things in my path.
100%.
And what is your sun sign?
Mine is Sagittarius, conjunct my ascendant. And so I come across very strong. I had an astrologer early in my journey. He had said, like, when you walk in the room, even if you don't make any noise, I bet people turn their head just because they can feel the energy shift. Because like I lead out with my sun, so normally my chart ruler would be Jupiter as well, but because the sun is 1.5 degrees away, the sun becomes my chart ruler. And it creates a very, very strong gravitational pull with kind of announcing my energy for me. And both my sun and ascendant are squaring my moon in Virgo. So my inner world is OCD, uptight, meticulous, organized. Like if somebody were to try to compliment me and be like, I bet you're so deep. Like your inner world is, I'm like, not really. It's like clipboards and organized people walking around with like color-coded things. Like that's how my inner world feels. But somebody with like the moon conjunct Pluto would be like, yes, I'm actually very deep. Like I'm so deep, most people can't even keep up with me type of a thing. And I don't consider myself a non-deep person, but that's not something that would resonate with me the same way. So I always love to hear like, I hate the things where it's like, oh, you could say that about anybody. And it's like, no, I love to give very specific, very nuanced interpretations for people because I'm not even translating, I'm interpreting. Because you have 2 different astrologers, 10 different astrologers look at the chart. They're all going to say something slightly different. That's why it's so crucial to pay attention to who you are allowing into your chart, into your space, into your aura, because what they say holds that incredible power like we had referenced earlier. I've had to clean up so many messes from astrologers. Somebody's like, I had an astrologer told me I'm going to end up divorced and I really love my husband. I'm like, give me your chart. Like, how did that happen? And it's like North Node in Aries. Well, that doesn't mean you're going to get divorced. It means you're here to figure out how to do things independently, but you can do that and stay in a committed relationship. And so the filter of who is translating things for you, who is interpreting is really, really powerful.
Right. It's funny that you say that because I saw an astrologer just recently, and my friend Tamara keeps on saying, you have a double yacht. That is so weird. And that is very unusual. And I just said to her, I was curious what her thoughts on. I'm like, so what are your thoughts on the double yod on my chart? She goes, well, it's not like you're special or anything. And I was like, oh, hi. Well, I was actually just really curious your take on the double yod in my chart, because I've heard such a variety of things on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have what I would actually call a yod. A lot of people that have yods, I don't mean to minimize their experience, because I just don't consider things a yod if it's created from like a mathematical point or even an asteroid. I need it to be like from an actual physical body planet. And your yod is what it's called. It's called the finger of God. And it's a pattern that's created from a sextile aspect, which is a 60-degree aspect, and then two quincunx aspects, which are 150 degrees. So it creates a really long pointy triangle in the chart. And the sextile aspect is very cooperative, very agreeable, very naturally easy to exchange. And then the quincunx is this energy of like, huh? What did you say? It's like coming from a different planet, speaking a different language, totally different culture. Like they do not understand each other. And so it creates this really interesting tension of you're here to figure out something that does not naturally make sense to you. When you arrive on the planet, this is not a thing that you're going to inherently understand. And the apex of the yod, the place where it's pointing, is the finger of God. It's where God has said, this is what you're here to learn in this life. And
I have yet to figure that out.
Yeah, the base of the yod is in between the two is where you find the answer. And so the base of your yod is formed from your moon and Pluto conjunction on one point. And then on the other, it's your Neptune and ascendant conjunction. But I would really consider it more of the Neptune, because the ascendant is a point in the chart, not an actual physical body. And then the apex of the yod is both Venus and Jupiter, and also an asteroid called Pallas, all triple conjunct. So you've got a lot of layers there with that one. So you're here basically. So Venus and Jupiter are considered the two benefics. They're the luck and the joy and the gifts and the you get a car and you get a car and all of that. And so to an extent, there's a big part of you that does not understand the fundamentals of the ease and the joy and things just working out for you. And that is one of your big life themes, is figuring out, like, I would interpret this to say figuring out how to allow yourself to truly receive all of that. And really the point of, like, you look at the in-between point, like what's in between the base of the yod to see what the answer is. And it's your nodal path, which is really beautiful, because the nodal path is arguably the most important part of your chart. Mm-hmm. It's your soul's direction. And so it's your north node, not even your south node. It's your north node that's at the base of it. And so what that tells me is the more that you truly are aligned to what your soul is calling you to do, you will naturally figure this out. But if you are not aligned to your soul's path, if you're doing something else, if you're mucking around over here or there and just ignoring, kind of sticking your fingers in your ears and being like, I don't care if I'm being called to do this thing, I'm going to do something different. If you're in kind of a harsh rebellion against yourself, you won't figure this out.
So what would you recommend in getting in touch with your soul path? Because I obviously have all sorts of ideas in my head and avenues, but how would you define that?
So this, in astrology, the soul path is you came with certain gifts and they were already built in, and they're your comfort zone. And it's where we kind of cling to, like a soft, fuzzy blanket of when things get hard, we like to go to our south node, and we're here to learn the uncomfortable north node. Your south node is in Taurus, which is interesting because you have so much in Taurus. And so to an extent, you're here to let go of that Taurus energy and move towards Scorpio, which looks like letting go of the tangible and moving into the unseen and the taboo and the below the surface and the hidden. Mm-hmm. So not really surprised on the little bit that I know about you with that. And you begin your journey more hardcore from letting go of your south node to approaching your north node, starting a little bit at your Saturn return, which is about 28 to 30 years old. If anybody listening had like life-changing, earth-shattering life, like shifting around 28, 29, 30, that was your Saturn return. And it kind of just messes with your reputation and your career path and everything, and just resets the board, so to speak.
I did. I reset everything. I got divorced.
Yeah.
I totally left the LDS religion, and I started a whole new career in real estate.
Yeah,
Completely
that makes
changed
sense.
Everything in my life.
I can totally see that. Plus your Saturn is in your 8th house, so it would have rocked those deeper layers of generational inheritance. Absolutely. And all of that was splayed wide open for you. And of course you had no idea what was going on, or you had no heads up, like most of us don't.
All I knew is fuck this shit. I'm doing something different.
Yeah, and I can get behind that. I think that to a large extent, religion is a fantastic way to control large groups of people.
Right.
And I say that as a religious person, but I don't belong to religion because I love the control. I do this because this is what I feel like God has asked me to do right now, so I do it. And so as you start to have that like cracking or that first drop in the water that kind of breaks the surface tension and your Saturn return. And then you hit your Pluto square Pluto, and then you hit your Neptune square Neptune, or vice versa, depending on the order of how that goes. And then you hit your Uranus opposition, which is about your mid-40s. I'm entering mine in about a month. Like I'm teasing the edge of that, and I can feel it. I can feel the shifts. The Uranus opposition is like Uranus calling us out from the other side of the universe saying, hey, knock this off. Be more
like
authentic.
To say Uranus.
You can say that.
I'm so sorry. I get distracted really easily. Squirrel.
I love it.
Uranus. Just kidding.
And that works too. People will understand you if you say it that way. And so with that, that's kind of that like final calling out transit. That's like it's just part of the flow of the timing of life. Like you can't speed it up. You can't hold it off. If you live long enough, you're going to go through all these transits. And so that Uranus opposition is it's what we call like the quintessential midlife crisis, where you like get rid of the spouse, get a convertible and start wearing mini skirts and cussing, or get a tattoo, or flip your whole life around.
Oh, I got my first tattoo at 44.
Yeah, exactly. It's very common to just be like, I am no longer available for this thing that I have always known deep down is not serving me. But before that, it's like you don't quite have the clarity. It doesn't surface enough until this planetary alignment happens, and then it emerges, and then it's available to be examined. So before that, it's kind of there, and you can't quite find it. And I can feel that in me as an astrologer, knowing these things, knowing what's coming up. It's like, okay, I told my sweet husband, buckle up, buttercup. I'm about to get a lot more authentic, and I don't know what that means.
Let's roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those, like, it's a wild adventure, and just kind of be open and ready for anything. And so you've already been through all of those life transitions. And so you're probably solidly on the North Node side of things instead of the South Node. You've probably been diving deeper and deeper because Scorpio is deep. And so your soul has been pulling you there. I think it's actually rather hard to ignore the call to go towards your North Node, because it's an agreement you made. It doesn't matter if you're open to spirituality or not. Before you incarnated, before you entered into your body in this life, you knew that this was the path that you were taking. And you made these contracts with certain people and certain life events and certain things that were going on. I believe all of this was set the moment you took your first breath. Not that your choice was set, but that the energetic governance was set. And
how there's no coincidence in the day and the time that you were born and location.
It's so vital. It is such a beautiful thing. And so kind of acknowledging that there is these divine cycles has been one of the most enchanting things for me about getting deeper and deeper with astrology. Is the more that I see it unfold in my own life and in the lives of those that I love and in the lives of clients that I only interact with for a little bit, and seeing all my students, it just continues to kind of witness back to me this divine orchestration of, you can't hurry it up, you can't avoid it, just allow yourself to experience it as you go, and see if you can get
a river
the most
rafting
joy.
ride.
Yeah.
It's being on the
it is.
rapid ride.
And some days you're in the rapids, and some days it's more of like a float. And I love those moments where I'm like, I think I'm in the in-between right now, because I've overcome enough of my own inner reactiveness through all of my, therapy and PTSD and healing and all the things. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to find that inner stillness where I can go days and days and days of just perpetual peace now. And so then it gets a little bumpy, but then I kind of return. My center has become more of a gentle place with myself, for which I'm profoundly grateful. That I remember the first time somebody explained that to me, I just remember looking at her like she had three heads, because it was like, how can you experience life that way? And I believe God sent her to me to explain that. I think that was, I lived in Arizona for 2 years, and I moved near her, and I really believe that she was one of the main reasons why I was in that not very pleasant situation down there, so that I could meet her and have her catalyst energy in my life, because now I experience that. I experience long periods of peace and ease, and then, life comes, a little bit of traction and a little bit of tension, and that's beautiful too. But I found a lot of solace in seeing things in this rhythm because now I have an explanation. When I'm having days where I'm just really tired or really energetic or really cranky, it's like I'll pull up my transits and I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just riding this energy.
It's okay to just let it be,
Yes.
too. Do we have to make sense of
Not
things
always.
sometimes? And sometimes it's like, all right, I'm just going to settle into this. I am fucking tired
100%.
today. I am going to settle into
just
it.
let
Let's
it be.
just revel.
Yeah, change into your pajamas or
Right.
take off all the clothes as we were talking earlier.
I know.
And just let it be what it is and know that it's this too shall pass. But you can actually see it in the chart. You're like, yep, I've got about 14 hours until this energy is out of the way. Like you really can time it that much if it helps. If it makes you crazy, don't do it. But if it helps, if it brings you more peace, do it.
All right. Well, tell us again, how do we get a hold of you, Naomi?
You can go to my website, illuxology.com, ILLUXOLOGY. That means the study of the light-filled life. I've got my free mini course on there on the foundations of light-filled astrology and human design. So if you're like, I'm barely keeping up with anything you said, definitely go check that out. You can run your free chart there and check out all the cool stuff.
Awesome. I really appreciate you coming and meeting me, a complete stranger, and speaking on my podcast. This has been absolutely riveting, and I can't wait to do lunch with you later.
Amen, sister. This was delightful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the I Drank the Kool-Aid podcast. Join us next time. If you'd like to participate in this discussion, get a hold of us at idrankthekooladpodcast@gmail.com. Now let me ask you, what flavor of Kool-Aid are you drinking?
This has been a production from a podcast studio.